Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday evening. According to my computer on my screen, I have a new feature. It just popped up. I don't know where it came from. It's 72 degrees on June 11th, 2021 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm at. Crafton to be precise, but don't leave flowers in front of my door. I'm not that famous. Anyway, I thank you for joining me as always. And before I get started, I encourage everybody to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we bring you. I'm sorry, I dropped something. Anyway, we bring you live shows each and every night during the week and on the weekends. We have The Hangover on Monday with yours truly and Brian Anthony Davis. That's every Monday at 8 o'clock. Please check that out. There's the Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. Tuesday nights, there is the Curtain Call with Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict on Wednesday evening. There is the Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, and Brian Anthony Davis, the podcasting manager, on Thursday evenings. And, of course, there's this show on Friday nights. Saturday evening, we have Touchdown Under with Matty Pepperall and Mark Davison. And then Sunday morning, usually around 9 a.m., sometimes later, we have, what's he call himself? Mr. 2 a.m. Tales from 2 a.m. That's right. With Brian Anthony Davis. That's a great fun show, especially in the off season. So please check all those out. And you can find all of those shows on any audio platform, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, whatever audio platform you want to use, we're on there, and we're growing in popularity. You can believe that. So please check it out. So much content, even in this time of year, they're always churning out new stuff. They're always thinking of ideas. Jeff, Dave, Brian, Michael, Shannon, Kevin, Jeffrey, me, kind of, Dave, Rich. I probably named people twice, but they're always thinking of stuff to bring you Steelers, interesting, nuanced Steelers material. And, of course, the same can be said for Behind the Steel Curtain, the editorial side, the website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's news, anytime there's a transaction. That's a hardworking site. It's always active. They're always bringing you stuff. So please check that out whenever you can. You won't be sorry. And thank you all for joining me in the live chat. Steelers Pittsburgh, Steelers Chick 46, Ryan O'Toole, Robert Mullins, George Testens. Boy, I'm talking really fast tonight. Thanks, Mean Joe. The iconic commercial from 1979. Clarence Washington, Ryan O'Toole. A legend, Ryan O'Toole. Mr. Hammer, ZZ. He says, "Hey Tony, Jared Devil, Arthur." I'm gonna try this last name, Esquibel. If I didn't get that right, I'm sorry. I did okay in school, but not okay enough to be able to pronounce everything in English. But that's just my failures. So I thank you all for joining me. I hope to bring you a fun show tonight. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, as the title suggests, is the ground game for 2021. The Steelers' new ground game. And when I say new, I'm saying it's new because it's going to include all new personnel for the most part. I read about this the other day. When people mention the ground attack from last year, and last year there was a reason to be down on their running game last year. The Steelers finished 32 in yards. They finished 32nd in yards per attempt, yards per carry. They scored 12 touchdowns. They finished 27th in that category. I'm sure they finished low in many advanced stats. I didn't check those out, but it wasn't a good year for the ground game. We all know this. We all know it, and it's a major cause of angst for the fans, for the media, for the players, for the coaches, for the owner, for the GM. Everybody is hard at work trying to fix that ground game, and people are wondering if it's going to be good in 2021. And as I wrote about on Thursday, when it was published on Thursday, my article. I don't know, and neither does anybody else. You know why? Because it's brand new personnel, as I just said a moment ago. Matt Canada is a coordinator. He's likely going to try to make it a more productive in 2021. But the entire offensive line is different. I mean, it really is going to be different in 2021. Big Al is gone. Alejandro Villanueva, he's gone. Marquise Pouncey retired. Matt Father left as a free agent. So it's going to be a completely different unit. Chuks Okorafor is moving from right tackle to left tackle, presumably to be the starter. But, I mean, even if he isn't the starter, somebody else will be. Kevin Dotson, the 4th-round pick from last year, he's going to be playing left guard, presumably. We like to hope so, because he really performed well last year when in his spot duty for injured players, specifically David DeCastro. So hopefully he wins that. He better win that starting job at left guard. As far as center, nobody knows for sure who's going to be the center, but it's going to be somebody different. Hopefully Kendrick Green. Hopefully he comes in as a 3rd-round pick and just totally outclasses BJ Finney and JC Hassenauer, because that would be what's best for business for the Steelers. So you're going to have a new center. Obviously, right guard's going to be David DeCastro. Hopefully he'll be healthy this year. He was obviously hurt all last year. I don't know. He suffered an ab injury in training camp, I believe, and he was never quite right. I mean, you could tell when he did interviews, and you can obviously tell with his play on the field that he just was not his usual Pro Bowl self. So hopefully he'll regain his form last year. And I can't imagine him as consistent as he was over the course of the first 9 years of his career, 8 years of his career. I can't imagine him just totally falling off a cliff last year for no reason other than health. So if he's healthy, if he's 100%, then I think you're going to have the old David DeCastro back, which can only be great news for the Steelers in both pass protection and on the ground. And of course, at right tackle, you're going to have Zach Banner. He won the job last year. He beat out Chuks for the right tackle spot in training camp, just barely. In fairness to Chuks, it was a close competition, but he'll be back this year to presumably be the starting right tackle. So you're going to have a whole new line. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator. The new line has a new coach in Adrian Clem, who, by all accounts, is extremely aggressive with his approach to teaching the line. It's not about. I mean, I'm sure technique's an important part of his teaching, but he's really emphasizing being aggressive and smacking your opponent in the mouth. That kind of, the smash mouth thing that Steelers fans love. He seems to be all about that. And of course, they brought in some guys who love that. Kevin Dotson is that kind of aggressive player. Kendrick Green is. Zach Banner's the quote unquote road grader. And of course, DeCastro is he's just a perennial All-Pro when healthy. So Chuks, I'm not sure about yet as far as his run blocking abilities, but I know he's projected to be a better left tackle than right tackle. So maybe just the fact that he'll switch over to a position that's more natural for him, it'll improve his performance. So, and of course you have Najee Harris, the running back, the 1st-round pick. He's at least in college, he's a stud. He was a stud. And the fact that they have him, makes their ground game better, at least on paper, because you have somebody who's head and shoulders better than anybody else in the backfield that they have on the roster. He's better than Benny Snell. He's better than Balaj. He's better than Anthony McFarland, I think. Speaking of which, that's another person I think we should be more excited about than we really are. Is Anthony McFarland, the guy with the 4.3 speed coming out of Maryland last year. He didn't look necessarily great in his limited playing time. He looked overly excited. He looked like he was running in place on a lot of his rushing attempts before he was like moving his feet before getting falling to the ground. But he was a nervous rookie who didn't have many opportunities. So I think him playing in a system that he's more familiar with, in Matt Canada's system, because he played for him at Maryland, that could benefit him, and that can certainly benefit the Steelers as a whole. So, I get why everybody's nervous and kind of negative about the ground game based on last year, but you have to throw all that out the window. None of that matters. You have to strip all that away, and you're essentially starting over. So yeah, it could be bad again. I can't imagine it being as bad as it was last year, because I don't think anybody could be as bad as they were last year. But it could also be a lot better. I'm not saying they're going to be a top 5 rushing team. I don't think they are. But if you're even in the middle of the pack running the ball, that's going to be a dramatic improvement. It's going to help that passing game so much, because obviously teams won't, we know what the problem was last year. By the end of the year, teams were just ignoring the run and playing the short pass, because that's mostly what they did, with the exception of the second half of that Colts game in week 16. It was all short passes. They basically abandoned the run, and even when they did try to run it was not effective. So, even if you improve to the middle of the pack on the ground in 2021 as a team, as an offense, it's gonna benefit the offense as a whole. So that's the first topic I wanted to cover. See if we have any new people. Here's one from Brian Brown, who joins us via YouTube, and he says, having a running back will help too, meaning I almost said Snell. Ooh. Those might be fighting words, meaning Harris. I don't know if I'm the only one to notice, says Brian. James Conner, Benny Snell, or that McFarland kid has had vision, has no vision whatsoever. Najee Harris should remedy that. Well, I think Conner had more abilities than you're giving him credit for, Brian. I think he was a really good player. He just maybe he didn't have elite vision, but he was a good running back. His main issue was health, and I think Harris is definitely a more talented player. He just has to prove it at the pro level. So, all right, now I'm going to get into some kind of fun stuff to round out the show, even though it's still early. But I don't have anything serious to talk about tonight. I think last week was really heavy with everything with Stephon Tuitt. So I'm going to try to keep things lighter this week. And next thing I wanted to talk about was something I don't know if I should talk about this now or wait. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it now. And that's something I forgot about from my youth involving the Steelers, and that was the 1985 season and the war of words that took place. If you can believe this, imagine this taking place today. There was a war of words in the paper, in the media, between Chuck Noll, the legendary Chuck Noll, the guy who according to Tunch Ilkin, could make his players lose bladder control just by a menacing stare. There were war words between him and little old South African kicker Gary Anderson, meek and mild Gary Anderson, the field goal kicker, the legendary kicker from the 80s and early 90s. A war of words based on the performance, not of him, not of the kicking team, but of the special teams as a whole, but mainly the coverage units, which were abysmal that year. I looked at some stats prior to the show, because I wanted to. That 85 team, that was the first year that Pittsburgh finished below 500 since 1971. They had that magnificent Super Bowl run in the 70s, and they were pretty good. They were fairly competitive in early to mid 80s. But that's 85 team was the first team to finish below 500 at 7-9, barely missed the playoffs. But if you look at their stats, they weren't great on offense and defense, but they were pretty darn good. They passed for 3,100 yards. They rushed for almost 2,200 yards. Frank Pollard came within 9 yards of hitting 1,000 yards. Walter Abercrombie, believe it or not, had 851 yards on the ground. So they were a good offense, not great, but good, and a really good defense. The offense finished 13th in yardage, but the defense finished 6th overall. It was a really good defense. They took the ball away 34 times. But what really killed them was the return game, the special teams. They gave up so many critical touchdowns and long plays in the punt and kickoff game, and it cost them games. It cost them games all throughout the season. If that was shored up, then they probably would have made the playoffs. And one of the things that made Anderson so frustrated is that, according to him, they only spent like 45 minutes a week on special teams during the week in practice. All of Noll's effort, and Chuck Noll was the special teams coordinator. People may not remember that or even know that, but he was the special teams coordinator back then, and he was even quoted as saying, "Look, we don't have time to go over everything. There's so much time dedicated to offense and defense. We don't really have time to devote a lot to special teams." I mean, this is Chuck Noll saying that. Could you imagine a war of words between Mike Tomlin and Chris Boswell today, and Tomlin saying, "Well, what are you going to do? We don't have time to cover special teams." People would lose their minds. I don't even know if Tomlin would retain his job if he said that today. So that's what went on back then. And if you're a historian of the Steelers, or if you remember the 70s, you know that their special teams were awful in the 70s. All throughout their entire Super Bowl run. Roy Gerela was just an average kicker. Brian and I were actually talking about this today on the Retro Show. He helped create Jack Lambert's legacy because he missed that field goal in Super Bowl 10, and Cliff Harris decided to be a punk, to quote our own Kevin Smith, and Jack Lambert went over and took care of business. But if Roy Gerela was a little bit more accurate with his field goals, Jack Lambert might not be as famous today. But Roy Gerela was awful. Bobby Walden, who was the punter through the first two Super Bowls, he was pretty average. He was pretty bad. And the fact that the Steelers went for it, if you remember the end of Super Bowl 10, or if you know about the end of Super Bowl 10, they went for it on 4th and 9. It was a simple running play on 4th and 9 to Rocky Bleier. And the reason why they did that is because Chuck Noll was scared that a punt would get blocked at the end of the game. He didn't want to have a punt blocked. He trusted his defense a lot, of course, but he also was definitely afraid of a punt being blocked, because I think two of them were almost blocked throughout the game. And the opening kickoff was taken back for like 50, 60 yards by Hollywood Henderson on a reverse. So it wasn't a great day for special teams. And I guess my point I'm trying to make is, even a legend like Chuck Noll, a first ballot Hall of Famer, a guy who went in, a year after he retired, which I guess all coaches are eligible as soon as they retire. But he had his weak spots. He had his blind spots. And one of those was he didn't really care about special teams. He literally didn't care about it. And it frustrated the heck out of Gary Anderson. And they battled in the media. People always obviously know about the famous Terry Bradshaw and Chuck Noll feud, but Terry and Gary Anderson had a brief battle in the media for a year or two, and I thought that was pretty. It's something I forgot about, but I was watching something on YouTube about it. I got into a little wormhole. This guy, his name is his YouTube name is Jaguar Gator. I guess he's a Gator / Jaguars fan. But he puts a lot of great content up, and he details a lot of great stuff from the past NFL history, and I love watching it. But anyway, he talked about that season. I completely forgot about it. I was like 13 at the time, so I guess it's easy to forget about something like that. But think about something like that happening today. And I guess to repeat my point, even legends like Chuck Noll have flaws. So on that note, I will bring a close to part one of tonight's show. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please stay with me. I will be right back. If you are following along on an audio platform, thank you for downloading part one, and please stick around for part two, where I will talk about some more fun things, including bad weather games and my experiences with them. And I want to get your feedback too. But anyway, please download part two of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio. If you stuck with me on YouTube and Facebook, I certainly offer you my gratitude. Thank you. And if you downloaded part 2 on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, iTunes, I thank you for that too. See if we have more people in the live chat. We have Bob Yeager, Chad Landsman from Facebook, Mule Skinner, who starts things off at a really hot take. He always brings in. He says Anderson wanted more money, and the Emperor laughed at him. I guess that was true. That free agency didn't exist back then, but he did stick around till through the '94 season, and maybe he wanted more money and after that year, but Bill Cowher laughed at him. I don't remember how that unfolded, but I know he left for Philadelphia before winding up with the Vikings and that kind of infamous kick that he had in '98. Then I think he finished out with the Titans. But yeah, he definitely left as a free agent eventually. And Bob Yeager has a trivia question, and this is one that I don't know. Maybe the live chat can figure this out. And he says, trivia question: who made the tackle on Hollywood Henderson on the opening kickoff reverse? Actually, I know who that. It was Jarrella, right? I think he hurt his ribs. If I'm not mistaken, is he the one who made that tackle? So, and Ryan O'Toole says the important people are here. That's true. It's true. We're all important people, but the really, really important ones are here right now. So, the third topic I wanted to get into is bad weather games. I'm a bit of a runner, not a great runner. I'm kind of average to below average, depending on who you ask or who I'm running with. And the last 3 nights, I had the worst luck. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. During my runs, I got hit with a torrential downpour, and I was totally drenched all the way through to my. It's just censored my underwear, if you can believe that. Everything was just drenched, and it was awful, and it was miserable, and I hate being wet, especially when my feet get wet. And of course, no fun when your underwear gets wet either. But anyway, that's beside the point. So 3 straight nights, I had to come home and, again, it's just I don't want to, like gross you up, but I take off all my clothes and put on new clothes. And I guess that's my way of saying I hate bad weather. And the worst game I ever went to as far as the elements for me, it's not having a great time, not enjoying myself, was back in 2013 near the end of the year. The Steelers were 5-8, and it looked like they were out of the playoff hunt. And if you remember that year, they famously got back into the playoff race and should have made it if it wasn't for Ryan Suckup at the end, missing a field goal in the Chiefs Chargers game. But anyway, they were 5-8. They looked like they were out of it. And my boss at the time, and I think he was trolling me looking back on it. Anyway, he gave me 2 free tickets. So I took my uncle, and I think that was the lowest attended, up until last year, of course, with the pandemic. It was the lowest attended game in the history of Heinz Field. It was awful. It was cold. It was windy. I could not get warm at all. Like we were sitting in the upper deck by the open end, and my feet were frozen. I still have like my one big toe on my right foot. Anytime it gets cold, it goes numb. I think I suffered frostbite that night. But anyway, I spent like half the game trying to get warm in the men's room because that was the warmest place. And I wasn't the only one who had that idea. It was a pretty popular place that night. And I hated it. They won. It jump-started their run at the end of the year, and they almost made the playoffs, but I was completely miserable. I hated every second that I was there. So I guess my question to you is, when it comes to the elements, do you prefer extremely cold? Do you prefer snow? Do you prefer rain? Or do you prefer it to be really, really, really hot and muggy? Or none of the above? If we're up to me, and I know this is Pittsburgh and we're supposed to be tough, but I'm not tough. If we're up to me, they would build a dome on the top of Heinz Field. They would put a roof on. If they did that, I would sign up for season tickets right away, and I'd go to every game, because that's what I want. Or if I was really rich and I could afford luxury box tickets or seats, I would do that. But I'm okay with a dome. Give me a dome. I don't like when it's hot. I don't like when it's cold. I don't like when it's raining. I don't like when it's snowing. I don't like when it's windy. I don't like any of that stuff. I want to have a roof over my head everywhere I'm at. So what about you guys? You like Mule Skinner says 87 and low humidity. He must be from San Diego or somewhere out there. Ryan O'Toole says he loves snow. Russ Obenstein says, this is unrelated. He says, what's up, Tony? In chat room, getting in late. Well, better late than never, Russ. Thanks for joining us. Brian Brown says, it's Florida. I get wet more than I'd like. Hey, Brian, do you remember that 89 game between the Steelers and the Dolphins? It was Thanksgiving weekend, and it was a torrential downpour, mainly in the second half, I think. And Pittsburgh was down 14-0 in that game, and they came back and won. I think it was 34-14. It was one of my favorite games of all time. I have fond memories of that game, but that's because I was watching it on TV. If I was there, I probably would have left. And Chad Landsman from Facebook says, cold weather is fine. You dress more layered. Yeah, I agree in theory, Chad, but it's never worked for me. Like I can put on the proper amount of layers, but it's always my hands and my feet. And of course, if you're the internet and you're always making fun of my hair, the top of my head, it gets cold. But it's mainly my hands and feet that just go numb on me, and it's miserable. And Bob Yeager says, snow. Jerome Bettis in his last game in Pittsburgh against the Lions, it was snowing. Yeah. And remember, like a few games before that famous Brian Urlacher game against the Bears at Heinz Field, where he ran over Urlacher on the way to a touchdown. So, and Mule Skinner, he's in Florida. Wow, good for you. You guys are in Florida. I wish I was there. Well, not maybe this time of year, but certainly in December, I wish I was there. So I have one more topic, and that is actually not Steeler related, but it's fun related. And that's, I don't know if any of you out there are college football fans. I certainly am. I love college football. And it was announced on Thursday that the whatever committee, some committee made up by a bunch of presidents, conference presidents, they're proposing a 12-team college playoff. And I was trying to read it and follow it, and it looks a little convoluted. It looks a little complicated, but I think we'll get used to it, and they'll probably work the bugs out. But at any rate, I think it was a long time coming. I think for years they basically, how it used to be in college football, how they would award a national title. They just voted for a team at the end, and whoever got the most votes was the national title or national champion. Even if they finished fourth prior to the bowl game, if everything fell in front of them and like the top three teams lost and they won, they were suddenly the national title, or I keep saying that, the national champion, even if they beat like some, lesser team. It was just weird. And then of course they went to the BCS and it was one game between two teams. Of course, it's one game. And then of course they went to the 4-team playoff in 2014. But I never thought any of that was enough. I always thought they should have expanded it, and now they have. And from what I understand, from what I've read, the top 4 teams, the top 4 seeds are going to have a bye, and then it's going to be 4 through 12, and then it's going to be the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals are going to come after that, and then they're going to, obviously go from there. And I love it because I think it would give the NFL playoffs a run for their money. Because I don't know if you ever watch college football on a regular basis, but there's a lot of passion for it around the country. Just 2 hours up the road from where I live, and I don't like Penn State, but I got to give it to their fan base. They're loyal, and they could play anybody, and 100,000 people will fill the stadium. West Virginia's down the road, an hour down the road. They're another rabid fan base. Obviously, SEC country, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, you name it. Tennessee. Those stadiums are always 100% filled to capacity. Florida, blah blah blah. You can go on and on. So, I mean, if you have like 2 or 3 dozen fan bases that think that they have a chance to make this 12-team playoff, wow. People like to say that it would dilute the competition down the stretch and create more meaningless games? I don't think so. I think it's gonna create more meaningful games, because that's what this thing is designed to do. It's designed to keep more interest with the fans and keep more teams invested up until the very end. If you have a chance to be the 12th seed in a playoff tournament, as opposed to playing in the Gator Bowl, you're going to be more incentivized if you're a player, and you might not sit that game out, just because you have, an eye towards a professional career. So I'm really, really, really excited about it. Like, of all the new things that have come along in a sporting sense over the last 5-10 years, this is the thing that really has me incredibly excited. And I don't know if it's going to really give the NFL playoffs a run for their money, but I think it might surpass the NCAA basketball tournament in terms of just pure excitement. So I think this is like, people always say it's like your Christmas morning. Well, this would be like my Christmas morning, getting to watch these games every week whenever it does take place. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I heard the earliest will be 2025, but hopefully they figure out a way to have it happen earlier, but we'll see. But I think, the one thing I miss about, the pre-pandemic life was watching college football with a full stadium, because I could take it with the NFL. I think, that's more of a quote unquote clinical kind of atmosphere. At least that's what a lot of people claim that they want. They want the players to just, do their jobs and not celebrate, whereas college football is all about celebrating and constantly, being into it and doing dances and waves and orchestrated celebrations in the stands, in the end zone, everything. So, as I wrote about a few years ago, I think, if college football, if the NFL was more like college football, I think it'd be a more fun product to watch. I think a lot of people involved with the NFL, from the owners to the coaches to the players to even the fans and the media, are too tightly wound, for a game, whereas college football, they have no problem showing their passion. And I'm just so excited about this proposed 12-team playoff. Hopefully it goes through, and I think it will. I think if they're proposing it, I think it's going to happen. So, but anyway, that's all I have for tonight, actually, as far as topics, but it leaves a little more time for you guys as far as your questions and comments. So let's see what you got. And I'll start off with Russ Obenstein. And he says, going to PSU game is awesome experience in whiteout. Yeah, they have that's a great atmosphere when they all show up, all the fans show up in white. That's probably pretty darn intimidating if you're an opponent. Mule Skinner says, Bama is Bama is a dynasty until Saban retires. Yeah, and probably afterwards too. He's obviously very important, but whoever gets that job, I don't think the pipeline is going to just dry up as far as recruits. People know Bama is the place to go, but it is like extraordinary that if you look at how strong the SEC is and how much talent is in that conference from top to bottom, the fact that Bama is able to dominate the way they do, it's amazing. And Saban, he might be the greatest college football coach of all time. Owen David asks me, and he says, "Hey, Tony, how are you? Hey, from England, 2:30 here. Wow, that is dedication. Are you part of that fan club that followed me on Twitter? Because I had a great fan club, Steelers fan club from England, that followed me on Twitter, and I followed back on Friday. And that's great to see. It just shows you Steeler Nation really is Steeler world, Steeler universe. It's just all over the place, worldwide." And Russ says, Joe Paterno, the legendary coach from Penn State, he lobbied for 12-team playoff for years. I think a lot of people did, but I know Paterno was definitely vocal about it. And he also wanted an Eastern Conference, and he wanted Pitt and West Virginia to be a part of it, but that never happened. Maybe Pitt should have took him up on that offer and created. But Pitt went into the Big East, which was great for them for basketball, but not so much for football. And now we see today football is definitely the thing that drives the bus in college sports, and Pitt's in the ACC, which is a great conference for college football. But I don't know if they really feel at home there. it would probably make more sense for them to be in the Big Ten geographically, but what are you going to do? It'd still be dwarfed by all those other schools like Ohio State and Michigan, and of course, Penn State. And Garrett Slingerland says, that's exactly why I can't stand college football. There's like 10 schools that get all of the top talent and steamroll the rest of the NCAA, and people act like they're surprised. Well, that's one of the reasons why they're creating this, or they're proposing this 12-team playoff, is because they want to give more teams a chance. But as far as the recruiting side of it, I realize money's a big thing as far as facilities and maybe even some underhanded stuff. But really, it's all about if you win, if you have the right coach and you can and you create a winning tradition, then you're going to get your recruits. I mean, some schools, they have an inherent advantage, like Notre Dame because of its national following, and of course Bama because of its status, and so many other schools. But if you create a winning tradition, you're going to get people to come to your program. It's just some schools just have advantages because of where they're located. Like if you look at college basketball, basketball is such a big thing in Tobacco Road. North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, North Carolina State, you name it. So if you're a 4 or 5 star recruit there, and that's where you're born, where are you going to go? You're going to go to one of those schools, whereas, Pittsburgh, Western PA, we don't produce a lot of basketball stars. So it's kind of hard to lure a 4 or 5 star recruit from the Carolinas over to Pittsburgh. The only way you do that is by establishing a tradition, getting to the Final Four a lot, winning a national title or two. And Pitt came so close to doing that, and they came up short. And I think if they would have gotten over the hump once or twice as a program, they would have been more of a powerhouse today, and they would have Jamie Dixon would still be at Pitt, and they'd probably have a lot easier time getting recruits. You look at Syracuse with Jim Boeheim, and that school's in the middle of nowhere. Yet they're able to win year in and year out, and they've won, I think, one national title, but they're always in the hunt. So. And Owen David asked from England, which defender has the most sacks? Well, I think you got to go with TJ Watt. He's going to, Brian and I talk about this on the Hangover all the time. He's going to have 16 and a half officially, because that's the record. So if he gets 16 and a half, he's the new single season record holder. So I think that's what it's going to be. TJ Watt for sure. And Dave Shipley asks, what do you think about Peterson talking great compliments for Harris? Peterson. Who's Peterson, by the way? I can't think of who Peterson is. But anyway, you mean Adrian Peterson, AP. I think that's great. I mean, I don't know if he knows any more about him than anybody else. I know he's an Alabama alum, but I mean, I think the talent is obvious with Najee Harris. He just has to go out there and hopefully the line, is gets better and he fits into the system and Matt Canada uses him properly. But, as far as we talk about this all the time, as far as positions where a rookie can step in and make a difference right away, it's running back. It's up there with maybe cornerback, as far as you're just out there, utilizing your raw talent and the learning part of it, that comes over time. Whereas other positions, obviously, like quarterback, even receivers struggle so much in their first couple of years. So I think it's great. I mean, I think Harris is a tremendous talent, and he just it's just a matter. It might be just he might be a big difference maker for them this year. Let's see what else we have here. And Ryan O'Toole asks, would you have paid to keep Connor as a number 2 and gotten rid of a couple of other running backs? I would have thought about it, but I think James Conner still wants to be a starter somewhere. And maybe even if it's not in 2021 with the Cardinals, I think it's where he went, Arizona. I think he wants to, maybe be in a different environment. be away from all the Pittsburgh angle, the Western PA former Pitt Panther angle, and just go kind of be a football player somewhere and not be about a story anymore. So I think he was gonna leave regardless, unless they weren't gonna overpay to keep him as the number 2 running back. So, I mean, I would have liked it in a perfect world, but I don't think it was ever really gonna happen. So, and here's one from Thanks Mean Joe. Would you rate AFC North as number 1 elite division in the NFL for 2021? Yeah. You look at the AFC. The West is the Chiefs. I think the Chargers are going to be better this year. The Raiders, they're the Raiders. You just don't know what they're going to do. The Broncos, I think they're, until they get their quarterback situation shored up, I don't know how good they're going to be. As far as the East, I think it's the Bills, and then I don't know. It's the Patriots have fallen off a little bit. I mean, they signed like half a new roster, which for some reason is supposedly a great thing. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but there's certainly uncertainty at quarterback for them. And of course, the Jets are the Jets. So in the South, you have the Titans. I think they're the best. They just traded for Julio Jones. I think they're definitely the class of that division. The Colts are pretty good. The Texans are, they got a lot of problems. The Jaguars are obviously a work in progress. And as far as the NFC, I mean, obviously the East is always a mess. We know that. The West is pretty good usually. The Seahawks, the Rams, 49ers, they had some injury problems last year, but I think they're going to be good this year as long as they can figure out their quarterback situation. And then of course the North is going to be dominated by the Packers more than likely, and the South you have the Buccaneers. That's a good division. The Buccaneers. Of course, Drew Brees retired. So, yeah, I would have to give it to the North. Yeah. But I think if you're calling it an elite division, that means Pittsburgh's pretty good, because I don't think you can call a 2-team division elite. So, yeah, I think they're going to go 3 deep. I think it's going to be a lot like last year. You're going to get 3 teams in the playoff, at least in the playoff picture, all throughout the year. So I think it's the best division of football. But we've seen that before. And I've said this. That's what frustrated me so much about the AFC East for all those years. It's like all those teams just waited for the Patriots to just be bad, waited for Tom Brady to leave essentially before they decided they were going to contend for the division. They kind of laid down and played dead for almost 2 decades while the Patriots reigned supreme. But usually, even the 70s Steelers had to contend with the Oilers and the Browns and the Bengals, always nipping at their heels and trying to take what they had. And and the Steelers have always had to deal with that. They've always had to deal with the Ravens or the Browns, even the Bengals, when it comes to trying to win a championship, not just a division championship, but a Lombardi. And I think it's been that way in the Central. The Central. Wow, that's an old statement. In the AFC North for a long time, and it's going to be that way again this year. So, all right. On that note, I think I'm gonna call it a night. It was a fun show. I struggled to find some stuff to talk about tonight, but it is the dog days of summer. That's how it goes sometimes. Here's one from Ryan O'Toole, and he says, "What are you looking for from a Canada offense?" Well, just basically a better running game. I mean, I'm not when it comes to that, a better running game and more creativity, more imagination. As far as the X's and O's, I really don't have a. Oh, wait a minute, I missed a super chat, but yeah, I don't really have a lot of just basically more aggression in the running game. I think they're making a point to be more aggressive and to run the ball. I'm not necessarily like predominantly a running offense, but be more effective at that and try to create more balance. And I have a $5 super chat from Dave Shipley, and thank you for that, Dave. And he asks, or he says, "I cannot wait for the slot and dime back competition. Love your show." Well, thank you. I can't wait for that either. There's a lot of things I can't wait for as far as I can't wait for training camp this year in the preseason. Like usually preseason's kind of boring. Like, but this year I'm really, really excited because there's a lot of shiny new toys to see on display and watch do their thing this August. And of course, if we're allowed to go watch them at training camp in Latrobe. But I thank you for the $5, Dave. And again, on that note, I will call it a night. And again, please check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. Check us out on any audio platform. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook, both as far as podcasts and on the editorial side. Not YouTube, obviously, but on Facebook. Every time there's an article published on Behind the Steel Curtain, you'll find it on Facebook. Within an hour, Michael Beck does a great job with our social media content. So please check us out. And until I talk to you guys again, have a great weekend and go Steelers.